Welcome to Fish University, your one-stop shop for the science behind fish management. It is part of the Natural Resources University Podcast Network. I'm Wes Neal, your host. I'm an extension professor of fisheries and a researcher for Mississippi State University. Join me as I talk to researchers, managers, and landowners about the tools and science and the tricks of the trade for managing fish, water, and habitat. The goal is for you to have better fishing and a healthier aquatic ecosystem. So grab a notebook and the beverage of your choice and relax and enjoy Fish University. Welcome to Fish University. Way back in episode 10, we had a very special guest that had become internet famous because of her ridiculously large copper-nosed bluegill that her and her father's pond was consistently producing. This pond had risen from the proverbial ashes of a massive fish kill and began to produce some of the fattest bluegill you can imagine. These fish graced the pages of many fishing media outlets. They were on the cover of Texas Hunter feeder advertisements, and they even had industry sponsorship. This is the Slab Lab I'm talking about, and this pond was affectionately known as the Slab Lab because it grew these monstrously large bluegill. In fact, the Slab Lab, this tiny pond, had its own logo. Well, unfortunately, the Slab Lab experiment had a major setback this past summer, so today I've asked Sarah the Closer Parvin to come back again and walk us through what she thinks happened to the pond, why it happened, and then we're going to discuss what's next for what she terms the slab movement. Time will tell if she has another phoenix in her back pocket. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Wes. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, I'm sorry it's under these circumstances.
Yeah.
Now, I know you actually had an issue a year or two ago, right? Didn't you have like a minor fish kill? Was it 2023 or 2024 where you lost a few?
It was August 2023.
Okay, so
Yes.
You lost a few fish back then, but the pond really recovered. It wasn't a big issue, right?
Yeah, that was nothing compared to what we've just been through. Matter of fact, that small kill back in 2023 probably set the stage for some of the greatest fish we saw through 2024 and up till July of this year.
Yeah, I kind of expected it would.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, normally I have my guests tell a little bit about themselves. Since we've already had a whole episode on the Slab Lab, can you give us sort of the quick rundown of how we got to this point?
Yeah, so it's hard for me to ever do anything quick, but I will do my best. So we are a 5-acre pond in North Alabama, average depth 6 feet, deepest point 9 foot. We grow juggernaut copper-nosed bluegill, and we have done that very well with a couple of setbacks and a lot of lessons learned the hard way. And July 20th, 2025, we had a 90+% fish kill of our trophy bluegill fishery, and we are in the process now of restarting it. But it took us several months to figure out the how, what, when, why, and where of that particular kill, and that's what I think we're going to discuss today.
It is, but let's talk a little bit about the Slab Lab prior to the kill. This was actually a bass pond, right? You
Yes.
started off, you guys are managing for trophy bass.
Yes.
And you had a big fish kill then.
Yes.
And as the pond recovered from that fish kill, you started to notice that your bluegill were something exceptional, right?
Right.
And so you began to switch gears and you began to manage for trophy bluegill. And when I say exceptional, or I say they're unusual, I mean, these fish, you got a picture of one behind you if anyone's looking at this on YouTube. These fish had a helmet, they had a brisket, they are 3 inches wide. And if people are familiar with fisheries metrics, they had a relative weight sometimes exceeding 160, 170%, something like that?
Oh, we exceeded 220% relative weight. Yeah.
Some of your biggest fish?
We were totally hitting the ball out of the park on that.
To put that in perspective for people, a fish that's 220 relative weight, that means it's 220% heavier than it should be for a fish of the same length.
That's
So,
correct. And
so
the measurements that we used for that were specific to our location. So in the state of Alabama, the calculator that I would use to figure out that information compared that to other bluegill relative to my location.
yeah. And so to say your fish were, I mean, is obese the right term? I don't know.
I mean, yes, yes. They were heavyweights. I mean,
Well,
they were to us they were athletes. But yes, they were exceptionally large, and a majority of them were rare. You would not see copper nose like this in the wild, and even in some of the most well managed private ponds, we were exceeding numbers and records and things like that.
you and I talked about this right before we started to record. This is not a typical pond management situation. I mean, you're pushing the envelope well
Yeah.
beyond what any typical pond owner would do. I mean, during the heat of summer, if I recall, you were feeding what, 40 or 50 pounds per acre per day or something like that?
We hadn't done that in years recent. In the
Okay.
past, when we had a 12-month feed program, we were doing that. We learned very quickly when those water temps got super warm, that just exacerbated the nutrient problems that we experienced. So we really went by water temps. Once we got above 86, 87 degrees, we reduced our feeding drastically. I'm talking about a couple of seconds spend one time a day, if
Okay.
that. So
But
we
but
had done that the past 3 years.
but during the peak feeding period, how much are you feeding per acre per day?
That really varies. Fall was the peak time for us feeding. And I mean, if the bluegills would take it, we would put it to them. We were running 20-second spins off 4 feeders morning and at dusk
In a 5 acre pond.
in a
So
5 acre pond. Yeah,
a lot of food
a
going in.
lot.
And you had bottom diffuser aeration going on. How many banks did that have?
We had 6 units out there, but those have not worked for us for the last 3 years. So we've had no bottom diffusion for the last 3 years.
Oh, okay. So now we're starting to understand what might have happened this
Mhm.
summer a little bit
Yep.
more. Yeah. So you used to have aeration. You also had a paddle wheel aerator. When you feed, it would come on, and that would just more to help distribute the feed throughout the pond.
Yeah, so we ran two 10 horsepower surface aerators. They're the big giant paddle wheels, and they move an insane amount of water. They were used in emergency aeration to bring dissolved oxygen up, but then we figured out we could use them once the feeders had gone off to take that feed sort of like a lazy Susan around the entire pond. So every fish had a chance to swipe at a pellet.
So everything was great. Fish are
Yeah,
growing. I was up there, I guess, in 2020, spring of 2023. Does that sound right?
maybe. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
right.
Unfortunately, I didn't catch a 2 pounder, but I caught almost every fish I caught was a pound and a half.
Yes.
Caught a few bass. You do have crappie in there that I don't know exactly how they got in there, but you try to take those out when you catch them.
Yep.
Just a funny story is every now and then, you catch a smaller bluegill. They are there. They're not many, but they are there,
Yeah.
and you remove those fish. But
Yes.
Sarah would make me. I would catch. Let's say I'd catch a 3/4 pound bluegill, and Sarah would say, "Okay, that one needs to go. Can you euthanize it? But hold on, let me not watch." She didn't want to see her babies die, but
I
she
did
wanted them.
not.
But she understood that they needed to come out. And then
Yes.
you also had, correct me if I'm wrong, you had American sport fish coming in once or twice a year and removing something along the lines of several hundred pounds of the smaller brim per acre each year, right?
We actually would selectively harvest 3 to 4 times a year in our
Oh,
5 acre water. And there
that
is a reason for that. That's not standard protocol for other ponds of our size. The main reason that we did that, number one, is to increase the amount of availability of forage for fish. Okay. So you have to remove X amount per acre. That's standard. But what we found was with this specific type of genetics that our fish carried, which were superior, their reproductive ability was supercharged 10x.
uh-huh.
So one female bluegill, let's say, may lay 20,000 eggs. A slab lab female may put out 80,000. So population management became the focus of our program, and having to do that very aggressively. And you'll see when we discuss July 20th why I was so surprised by the amount of fish we still had in our waters. But that is why we harvested, was because we had to continuously pull out fish. We were already pushing the water. It's a lot of, biological oxygen demand with that density and that many of large fish. So that's another piece to this puzzle, is the amount of trophy fish that were being grown in this water. It wasn't
Yeah.
just a handful, it was widespread, high density trophy fish.
Yes. So you're removing all these fish to,
Yeah.
we've preached, I've preached more times than I can remember on this podcast, removing fish. So I think the listeners understand, it depends on the number of mouths you feed. I always use the analogy that, let's say you can have 500 pounds of brim out there. Well, you can have 500 1-pound brim, or you can have 252-pound brim, but you can only have
Right.
500 pounds of brim out there. So
That's right.
So we understand that. So everything's going well. The fish are growing. You've had multiple 2+ pounders. Did you ever break 3 pounds? You got close. I
Yes.
remember you did break 3
Yes.
pounds.
We did.
So we had some 3 pounders out there. And these fish, the other important thing to point about the Slab Lab bluegill is you lacked length. You didn't have long fish. That was probably the one limiting factor. Is these 3-pound fish were probably not exceeding 12 inches, right?
No, but we did. That was a trend we noticed spring of 2025. We started to see 12, 12 and a quarter, 12 and a half inch copper nose bluegill.
So, but think about that. A 12-inch fish that weighs 3 pounds.
Yeah.
So, that's a fat fish.
It is.
Everything's going great. The fish are getting bigger. And then we get to, we had a small fish kill fall of 2023, which probably was a good thing. You thinned the population down, which meant the ones that remained had more food and can grow larger and more habitat and better oxygen dynamics, etc. Of course, they filled that void pretty quick. And we get to June of this year. Tell us what happened.
Well, in June of this year, we were still noticing. It was in July, but in June of this year, we noticed and this is going to be interesting. We noticed, number one, we did not have the presence of cyanobacteria, aka blue-green. We get that usually March or April every year, like clockwork in the South. And we were like, wow, this is the best our water has ever looked this far into the season. And then, you fast forward a couple of weeks and it's July and the Alabama heat has set in and it is the dog days, it's triple digits, and I start noticing the blue-green. At that point in time, there wasn't even time to try to treat it because we had that blue-green set in. The water temps were 92 degrees. And on July 19th, we got almost 4 inches of rain in 60 minutes. And it was pouring into the Slab Lab. It was coming from some small areas where runoff comes in. And when I tell you, in 30 years of Slab Lab history, I've never seen the pond spill over. It was spilling out. And Dad and I knew we were in big trouble. We knew it.
So keep in mind, you said you no longer have the bottom diffusers working.
No.
So did you have any aeration at all going on?
The surface aerators, so those are those 2 10-horsepower paddle wheels I talked about. But really kind of what the gas on the fire was with this was the volume of water that entered into the Slab Lab and mixed our water chemistry, which y'all know, we've never sugarcoated it. We've always been honest. We were already pushing the limits on everything we did because we were trying to see just how big can this fish go, right? And so when you've got those ingredients on the table and you get this unknown, the variable, which was an astronomical amount of rain and a very short time frame coming into a hot pond that is shallow, you're going to get that mix up. And that is what hit the fish first. So you've got, ammonia, nitrate, all of these things, pH that are just going haywire, and nothing can acclimate to that when that's happening. And then you've got a bloom that crashes, there goes your dissolved oxygen. I mean, it was literally like knocking down dominoes, just boom, boom,
Right.
boom, 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 boom. And within 12 hours, 2/3 of the pond was floating. That's
Yeah.
how fast it happened.
Oh, yeah. So what happens? I think we've talked about turnovers in this podcast in
Yeah.
the past, but essentially, when all that water comes in, it breaks down any stratification that the pond
Mhm.
has. It mixes the pond up, so all the organic matter that's on the bottom that's built up. This is old feed. This is bluegill poop. This is grass clippings and leaf
Yeah.
litter and everything that's out there, and that's going to get stirred up. You're going to bring up anoxic water from the bottom, and the water
Mhm.
at the bottom is anoxic because you got all the biological oxygen demand. The bacteria are breaking down organic matter, using up
Mhm.
oxygen, releasing carbon dioxide. It mixes it all up, and it's it's cloudy. There's not a lot of sun. There's not a lot of photosynthesis going on. You
Mhm.
end up with essentially an oxygen crash because the pond needs more oxygen than is in the pond.
Right.
And what was really interesting about your fish kill, I mean, usually when you have a pond turnover, it is nearly a complete kill. Usually what survives are the small fish that can pipe at the surface and get that little bit of diffusing oxygen. What you told me about this fish kill that I found particularly interesting was the fact that it did not recover oxygen for 4 days.
Mm-mm.
Normally, after a fish kill, the sun comes back out, the phytoplankton start to grow again, you get some oxygen diffusion, and you had those paddle wheel aerators running, right?
I did. Mhm.
And still, for 4 days, the biological oxygen demand was so great that it couldn't compensate for that need for oxygen.
Right.
Um, that's pretty incredible. I can't believe you have any fish left in the pond, to be honest with you.
Well, and we do, and we'll get to that, but
Yeah.
I wanna note that those oxygen readings that we were taking, so we had the little, handheld dissolved oxygen meter, and we were taking those readings 3 times a day from multiple spots around the pond at different depths. I knew on day 2, I was like, nothing is left. Nothing is left." And, the water was warm enough that as the fish started to decompose, they floated a lot quicker than they would, let's say, if this was a wintertime kill or something along those lines. And I just knew, I was like, the whole program's done. We don't have anything. Cut the paddle wheels off at this point. There's no reason to aerate this water right now. We're basically gonna throw our hands up for the moment and walk away. And that's what we ended up doing because we just were not getting any dissolved oxygen readings that could support anything, with the exception of the gambusia, which are the mosquito fish that have since rapidly multiplied in my water. And basically, we have a ton of them in the Slab lab now.
Mhm. And nothing feeding on them.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So I have to ask this question. How much crying was involved?
Okay, you're going to ask that, and I'm going to cry. To be honest with you, this hit me. It hit me really hard, and it has nothing to do with, oh, wow, all this social media, grandstanding and fame and notoriety. I felt like I was out of time doing this with my dad.
Mhm.
And, we've got 7 years in this. That's 28 seasons of growing fish, right? And a lot of people in the who's who of the industry all called me and they were like, look, you're earning your stripes. If you haven't seen thousands of fish float, you're not playing in the big leagues. You,
Yeah.
you can do this, start back over. But the fact was, I didn't know that I would have the time to do it again with my
With your
dad.
dad. Mhm.
And my dad was a champion. And this is how he is. His mindset is always this. He was a football player back in college, and he's always kind of had this very athlete, like championship mindset. And I went and picked him up from the house and drove him down to the pond the day after the rain event, which would have been July 20th. And I rode him around. And he said, "Oh my goodness, it's most of the fish." And I said, "Yeah, it is." And his next statement to me was, "We're going to come roaring back." And so I knew right then, I was like, okay, we can do this. And then it was like this process of emotions of like crying and being angry and being like, why does this keep happening? And then it became a mission. I have to figure this out. I've got 7 years. I don't want to waste it. I know how to grow the fish. Now we've got to figure out managing water quality and what can we do and how can we prevent this from happening to other people? Because the other side of this was when I went public with Slab Lab's dead, and that's basically it. So many people reached out to me and were like, I've had a fish kill. And for the several weeks after that, I was getting emails. I'm having a fish kill. What do I do? Can you help me? I was like, man, this is a problem in the South. This is a real problem down here. I know of several big catfish ponds. They had 100% kill. They lost everything. So, it became this mission and I'm going to figure it out. And I don't care. I'm always going to tell the truth about it. Dad and I do assume some responsibility for flying too close to the sun with our management style and the things we were trying to do. But somebody's got to go first.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to figure it out.
Yeah, and you knew the risks,
Yeah.
and it's just like gambling. You know the risks, but you're willing to take the risk.
Right.
And it's the payoff, the reward outweighs the risk in some cases, and it's what you chose to do. I always tell
Yes.
people, people come to me, and when I talk about pond management, I say, well, you can't have everything from a pond, and ponds are limited by their geographic region and stuff, but there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of truth to the fact that, you know, if you're willing to put what it takes into something, you could have something like I can grow 10-pound bass in Alaska. Now it's going to cost you millions of dollars, and we're going to need to
Yeah.
have greenhouses and recirculating systems to bring them in the wintertime, but we could do it.
Yeah.
And you were just pushing the envelope
Hmm.
because you wanted to, and that's your
Right.
objective. Every pond owner needs to decide what they want out of their pond, and yours was a grandiose objective that you were willing to take the risk on. So,
Yes. That's exactly it. I was willing to risk it. And, as sad as it was for me to see my big, beautiful fish void of color, and let's not even discuss cleanup.
mhm,
It was the hottest days of the year during that cleanup. We had 115-degree heat index, and we would start work at sunup, and we would only make it to about 7 a.m. Because the heat was so bad and it was just atrocious. But I said that day, I said, I will not do this again. I will figure this out, but I will not clean up a fish kill like this ever again.
mhm. Yeah, my master's degree, I had 4 ponds in my research program, and 3 of them had complete fish kills like
Mhm.
that, and I remember cleaning one of them up, and we had several pickup trucks with 55-gallon trash cans in the
Yeah.
back, and, of course, I think I learned about the fish kill was on a farm, a research farm that was I didn't know the fish kill occurred until, like, day 2 or 3
Mm.
in the hot part of summer. So you'd pick up these big bluegill and you'd throw them into the trash can, and they'd hit another bluegill's spines, and you'd hear the sound of gas escaping.
Yeah, I know it. I know
It
it.
it
And
was
I'll tell you this, the smell, it's a smell I can still smell, sort of like blue-green algae.
yeah, well,
If
it's
you know,
funny.
you know.
I have Write in the Rain notebooks that I used in my master's degree. So my master's degree, full disclosure, how old I am, was in 1994 to 97.
Okay.
So we're talking 30 years now,
Yeah,
that if I pulled those out, I can still smell the smell on the pages. So it is a smell you won't forget.
that's true.
Um, so you cleaned it all up, and
We
now,
we were able to clean up a portion,
yeah,
not all of it, not all of it, and that's gonna be important too because we were restricted, we didn't have a boat, and a lot of the fish we could not net out. We had to literally walk on foot around the bank with a net and just get what we could get out. And so a lot of fish were left to sink back and decompose,
okay,
which I never, ever recommend. If anybody is watching this and experiences a fish kill, clean the fish out because they
yeah,
just further, degrade your water quality. There's a whole issue now that we have to address fixing that before we go forward too.
understand.
Hmm.
And if I recall, I believe next week you have an electrofishing sample. Going to check to
Yes,
see
on
what's
Tuesday.
left.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm curious. It'd be really interesting to find out what you find. I mean, surely you're going to see lots of very small bluegill that survive the kill. I would be surprised if you found a bass. I hope your crappie are gone.
I don't believe that they are.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Fish University. Do you have a question or a topic for the podcast? If so, you can email me at Wes, that's W-E-S, .Neal, that's N-E-A-L, at Mississippi State, that's M-S-S-T-A-T-E, .edu. Or instead, please visit the Fish University Facebook page. On the Facebook page, you will find useful articles, videos, stories, and other information, as well as updates on upcoming podcasts. Not to mention, you can send me a private message with questions or suggestions. Just search Fish University and look for our colorful logo. And please follow the Fish University page. We need your support. Now back to the show. My understanding is, so you've been taking these fish out for years as part of your management program, but a lot of those fish have gone to hatcheries to be reproduced, correct?
At American Sport Fish,
Okay,
yes. And
so-
they are also in ponds at Auburn.
Okay, so you have, if you did lose all your bluegill, which I don't think you have, but if you did lose all your bluegill, the genetics are still out there for you.
Yes.
Have you thought about poisoning out the pond and starting from scratch instead of trying to start off with what you've got left?
Yes.
Because that way you could get rid of the crappie. You could, put in the right numbers of fish, the right sizes of fish, start everything from scratch. I don't know if you want to, or you might have also thought about draining it and cleaning it out. So not draining it down and cleaning it out, but you have thought about poisoning it out.
Yes, we have thought about going in and kind of nuking it. That way we can get rid of unwanted species. Because here's the thing. We know we have bluegill that survived. I've been catching them on the smallest little fly that I have. And I'm talking, they are 2 to 3 inch fish. I know I've got them. I know I've got 3-inch shellcracker that survived. I've not seen any bass. When I was cleaning up from the kill, though, I had bass fingerlings that were that big. I also had a bunch of shrimp that we didn't even know was in the pond that died. But our thinking with cleaning the water, so to speak, and starting over from scratch, there's a lot of data to support growing trophy fish, especially bluegill, starts in the first 90 days of their life. These fish that have survived right now, they are 90 days old. They are probably from May, June, possibly even a July spawn, because we had bluegills on the bed several days prior to the big event, the rain event that happened. Did those eggs survive and they hatched out? We don't know. That's why we have to shock survey and see what is the density, what is the dynamic right now, because I don't want to manage around it. I want to start with a blank slate. Once I've reset my water, and we'll talk about that too, because we have a whole team coming in to do that, I want to ensure that we do this the best way possible going forward. So yes, we have looked at poisoning the pond.
Okay, so let's talk about what, do you have a plan, or are you still waiting? So tell us your plan. What's next?
So, number one, people have to understand when you have got a eutrophic pond, and the Slab Lab is the exception to just about every pond management rule you can think of, we are severely hyper eutrophic. So we've got just nutrient dense water from years of feeding program, from several fish kills, from being in the South and hot water, all these things, right? They basically create this pressure cooker. There's only so far you can go without having to mitigate or treat those circumstances. We're looking at coming in and doing what we call a reset. We want to rewind the years of that pond back, and we have to do that by way of phosphorus mitigation. When you've got an unbalanced amount, an extreme amount of phosphorus in the water, you get these harmful algal blooms. You get these things that get out of whack, and before you know it, your pond is lime, paint green, and it smells like sulfur, and all these things are happening, right? You have to go in and fix that. So several days after the fish kill, we did the sediment fractionation, where they go in, they pull the first 6 inches of sediment from the soil, That goes off to testing. That takes about 4 weeks to be analyzed and looked at because that tells us about legacy phosphorus. And then we also are looking at total phosphorus. So that's basically how much gas is in the water to fuel dangerous algae blooms and just total water chemistry nightmares. And the Slab Lab has a lot. No surprise. We did not think it was going to be some miracle. We knew that we were going to be on the severe end of being hypereutrophic. So we have to fix that. So we are looking at going in and doing a reset dose of Metaflock. And, phosphorus mitigation is kind of green, right? Like there's not been a lot of study or research done on some of the products that are available on the market. So what we do next will be a full-blown white paper study on how this product works, how it reduces the phosphorus, how it binds the phosphorus, how does it keep the phosphorus sequestered at the bottom, which is what we have to do. Because really, aside from this, the only other option would have been to dredge. Okay. And you're looking at a very high 6-figure investment plus a lot of time. I mean, the soil haul off, if you dredge here in Alabama, it's almost 6 figures to do that. Not to mention, it's very difficult permitting wise to get that done. So, this in theory is another experiment out here at the Slab Lab to see, does it work? We are adding in 2 3-horsepower surface aerators that will run 24/7. The thing with dissolved oxygen is those curves. It changes with the daytime, weather conditions, water temperatures, all of these things. We want to avoid that, but we need something that we can run 24/7. The paddle wheels are fantastic. However, they beat the banks up. They're extremely expensive to operate 24/7, 12 months out of the year. So these surface aerators will go in, and then we're also installing a buoy monitoring system that will run 24/7 and will give us dissolved oxygen readings and a whole lot of other data from the pond. So it's literally going to be an experiment out there. It's the Slab Lab for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like you're going to essentially have an aquaculture situation. I mean,
Yes.
we had one of those monitoring systems on our South Farm, which is our aquaculture station, has 80, 90 ponds on it, and every
Right.
pond had one of those in it, and went back to so it will keep constant monitoring of the oxygen levels, but you're also going to have those new aerators. You're not going to go with the destratification system at all this time?
No,
Okay.
because we don't want to disturb the bottom.
Yep.
We're about to put a heavy dose of Metaflock in there, and we
Mm.
want to keep that sediment bound. We want to keep it down where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
In short, I mean, that's the easiest way for me to explain it. I don't want to mix anything. Our pond is relatively shallow. I mean, the average depth is 6 feet. We're going to get enough aeration from those 3-horsepower Casco marine surface aerators. I think this is the plan, and we're going to find out. We're all going to find out together because I'm going to share all of this from the installation to the product application to all the data in real time.
Yeah. So you mentioned dredging, but you haven't thought seriously about just draining and scraping that phosphorus out, because my concern is the Phoslock's not taking it anywhere. It's leaving it in the pond, and can it become bioavailable down the road?
Well, it's Metaflock, and according to
Yeah.
Metaflock, no.
Okay.
Because
They
you will
permit.
do this initial reset dose, and then
Yeah.
you will have a calendar of monthly maintenance dosing because you've got to manage phosphorus internal and external. And we do plan to feed and grow giant bluegill all over again. So there's phosphorus in the feed, there's phosphorus
Mhm.
in the waste, there's phosphorus coming in from external loading. We have to mitigate that or buffer it to some degree. So that's what we're going to see.
So you'll be using maintenance doses to continuously flocculate the phosphorus out. What about nitrogen? Are you going to do anything to try to regulate nitrogen?
Uh, we'll see, because with this dosing we're going to put in, we're trying to avoid the basis of our food web. Okay. So you've got good phytoplankton, you've got to avoid killing that off.
Mm-hmm.
The Metaflock, in theory, does not affect that. So we'll be adding this application, and we're doing all of this in the next 10 days. Like, it's happening rapid fire. we will see, because we'll be testing water samples, we'll be checking pH, because Metafloc does have some pH sensitivity. And we've been running those water samples for 2 months straight since the fish kill, trying to figure out what is baseline, what does this pond do in the morning, in the afternoon, all those things. So once we've got that initial reset dose in, there's a lot of water testing that happens along the way. And that will kind of give us the marching orders for what's next. This is literally like experimental.
Yeah. Normally, phosphorus is the limiting nutrient, but it sounds like you
Yeah.
have an abundance of phosphorus. Um,
Yes.
and I'm just a little bit concerned that if nitrogen is overly abundant, it might shift the phytoplankton community to something that you may or may not want as much. If
Right.
that becomes, if phosphorus continues to be the limiting nutrient, that shouldn't happen, even though you have a lot of nitrogen. And plus, nitrogen is a lot more transitory than phosphorus.
Right.
It fluctuates, it washes out a lot easier, especially if you have 3.5 inches of rain in 60 minutes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So all this is happening in the next few days. You're
Yes.
sampling your pond next week. You're doing
Yes.
you're locking up the phosphorus and doing that whole program, installing the aerators, and then hoping to potentially either poison the pond out this summer
Yeah.
or come back in, and either way, come back in and stock this fall if stocking's necessary. At
My
least,
game plan is to make the call on the front of that shock boat next week. I know there's crappie left. I've caught them.
yeah. Oh, you've caught them since the kill?
Yes.
Okay, well then, yeah, that's a pretty good indicator.
Yes.
It's amazing how fish that we don't want seem to survive better than fish that we do.
Yeah. I text some of our mutual friends in the pond world and sent a picture and was like, well, this is what survived. They were like, "You've got to be kidding me." And I'm like, "Listen, at this point, the Slab Lab is just a complete anomaly. I don't
Yeah.
even know how this happened, because those fish are normally more susceptible to water chemistry, especially DO events. How did they survive? The crappie would have spawned months before the bluegill did.
Hmm.
How did these fish survive?" I'm like, "This is insane."
Yeah. So is American Sportfish doing the electrofishing next week?
Yes. Yes.
And are they going to do the rotanones
Yes.
application? I hope they can
Yes.
find rotanone. It's been pretty hard to get lately.
It
Um,
has. It really has. So they're working on that piece. I know it's there a shortage because it's used in so many pesticides. The thinking with that too is, once that's done, you then have to wait several weeks, potentially a month, before you can look at adding fish.
yeah.
So that's kind of a wrench in the plans, because obviously Dad and I are like, we're ready to go,
Well,
but
you
we have
wouldn't.
to take a step back so that we can do this the right way.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to stock. I mean, if they, let's say they rotanone October 1st,
Mhm.
you wouldn't want to restock in October anyway. It's just too damn hot. Um,
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So potentially an end of October stocking, we could pull that off even with the rotenone. It's all going to depend on what my eyeballs see on the front of that shock boat. And
mhm.
I have to tell you, and again, I'm probably going to catch criticism for this. As bad as the crappie interfered with our program, and I think it really did hinder some of the results we could have seen. And obviously, they took up valuable biological oxygen demand, and they did all these things that were counterproductive to our program. We still managed to grow world class bluegill.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, could I just do that? Could I just start with what I've got and just not even stock? Would that make any sense? And that's why I've got to get an idea of, what is density? What do these fish look like? What is going on?
But what's interesting is, that's how you started before.
I know.
Who knows
Yeah.
what this fish kill might have done to your genetics? It might have improved them. It might have hurt them. Who knows? And you won't know unless you just let it go.
That's right, and I can't let anything go without knowing. I'm a dog with a bone, and I went down to, Auburn a few weeks ago, and I asked that question. I said, at that point in time, I was thinking we had 100% kill. We saw no signs of life. We had
Mhm.
cut on the feeder, nothing came to feed. Those gambusia were multiplying rapidly, which tells me they're running unopposed in my water. Wes, the wildlife left. The big turtles left. Baldy, our favorite bald eagle, she left. The idiot bird Frank, the blue heron, left. They left because there was no more food source. So
Yeah.
we had all these signs telling us 100% kill, total kill, nothing in the water, and we 4 days no dissolved oxygen. What could have survived? Anyway, I go down. I said, well, let me just ask, if I had a fish that survived or a handful of fish that survived, would that affect the genetics? Would that make them somewhat more immune or, just superior in some way? And in theory, yes, their offspring years down the road. But you also have to look at it like this. They were only exposed to one catastrophic event, not several. Is that enough to change the genetics or to create that adaptation? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, most likely no, just because
Yeah.
they survived not because they were more tolerant, they survived because they were smaller.
Yes.
And so, I mean, they're offspring of the fish that were there already,
Right.
and so they should have the same genetics of the same fish that died. The question is was there any kind of genetic bottleneck that occurred because of the fish kill? Maybe it tweaked the genetics one way or another in terms of
Yeah.
growth rates. Maybe the longer fish, maybe the shorter fish. Who
Yeah.
knows? But for sure, you got to put bass back in there.
Yes, I will definitely need a predator back in there. And stocking rates, things like that. That's all like we've thought about it, but we don't do anything until we look and see what's really going on beneath the water surface, because that's going to tell us the story. But I will not stock standard. I'm not going traditional numbers, 1,000, 2,000 bluegill per acre. I'm trying to grow big fish. I'm
Uh-huh.
going to understock. I will put in a predator when the time is right, which will be probably either pure Florida bass or the tiger bass. I'll go back with them. And I had this idea to try and do all male copper-nose bluegill. That is one thing I would love to do at some point in my life, but it's not going to be right now. I don't have the bandwidth to try to attempt that, but that's got a lot of potential. And there's a few people that have done that, but I just thought that would be so interesting, because if I could do nothing but male bluegill in theory and delay that sexual maturity on them, you're talking about exponential growth on those fish. And I mean, it would be rapid, rapid. So maybe a fun idea for down the road, but not right now. We will be stocking in male and female copper-nose.
Well, if you ever decide to do the male only bluegill pond, let's take it a step further and do a triploid male only bluegill
I
pond.
like that. Okay.
That way,
Okay.
they invest nothing in successful reproduction,
I like
and
that.
they, with triploids, their cells are actually larger to begin with.
Yeah.
So because they have a little bit more genetic, they have 50% more genetic material within their cells. Their cells are larger. We did that with largemouth bass a few years ago, and I was looking for a way to verify whether they were triploid or diploid.
Hmm.
And we looked at the blood cells, and the red blood cells of a triploid is larger than the red blood cell of a diploid because it's got more genetic material. So suggests that all their cells are slightly larger because of that genetic.
Interesting.
Who knows?
So y'all looked at the blood. What did you use to look at the blood?
Just a microscope. Simply just
Okay.
basically took a syringe, pulled a sample of blood and put it on a microscope and measured the size of the red blood cells. And the red blood cells of a triploid now this is 30 years ago, but I believe that a diploid had a red blood cell that was somewhere in the 10 to 11 micron length,
Okay.
whereas a triploid was more 12 to 13.
Interesting.
So, so
Okay, don't be coming on here trying to change my mind
oh, well, but
about my plan.
you need to build a hatchery to be able to make all this too. So
Yes.
it's not,
Yes.
I don't know that anyone's ever done anything with triploid bluegill. We've played around with triploid crappie. We've played around with triploid bass, but I've never read a paper on triploid bluegill.
Well, somebody always has to go first. I need to fail 25 times to hit it on the 26th time and be
Yeah.
successful. And that's one of the things that I've told people, because obviously when I was honest and truthful and transparent about what we do and what happened, the internet came for me in a major way. And I was just like, look, I wasn't going to hide it. Number one, there was no way you could hide that type of kill. The big
Yeah.
bluegill are gone, they are no more. But number two, it's important because I find it fascinating the things that Dad and I have had to hone in and focus on, even from just a simple observing our pond. We look at it as something completely different now. And so it's like, why not share that? Why not let people know? But you know how the internet is. It's full of people that aren't always understanding or wanting to understand. So, I just put it all out there and what happens, happens.
Yeah. I've seen some of the comments people have left on
Yes.
your Facebook page, and
Yes.
it's sad. I mean, 99% of the people are "you go girl," all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's always that one asshole.
That's it. That's it. That's literally it. And it's like, I don't want to argue with them, but I
Yeah.
want them to understand, you know, number one, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But number two, I'm very open about what we do. I do not know everything.
Yeah.
I am trying to learn. I'm trying to do this. And it just so happened to kind of hit this momentum of interest that other people are now following along and paying attention. Why would I not share the misstep? Why would I not share the failure? That's part of it. That is absolutely part of it. So, we just deal with what we can deal with, and we hope that people will understand we're trying to improve. That's all we're trying to do. So,
It's your pond goal. They need to have their own
yes.
pond goal. They're jealous they don't have a pond. That's why they're jealous of you.
Well, and then that came all the armchair quarterbacks about you need to do this and you need to do that and you need to
Yeah.
do this. And it's like, we really, time and money is a big deal. Okay. And we're trying to do this the best way we can with very little of both of those things.
Yeah.
And that's just the brass tacks of it.
Yeah. I don't comment at all on like Facebook pages on pond management or fish
Yeah.
identification
I
be- because I mean I'm on all those pages. I watch your page. I watch these, pond management forums and stuff. And I see every person, every armchair quarterback
Yep.
offering an opinion, and 50% of the time it's semi-accurate, and 25% of the time it's a little bit misleading, and 25% of the time it's flat out wrong. And I'm like,
Wrong. Yeah.
I could argue, but I've got better things to do with my time. I go on these pages. I mean, someone will post a picture of somebody with a warmouth. What species is this? And it's brim. Oh,
Brim.
that's a red ear. It's just like I could correct them, but I got better things to do with my time.
Oh yeah, I do
Yeah.
too. I try not to ever, wrestle with the pigs because you get dirty and the pig likes it. But at the same time, it's like I have this intense desire to put out information, but it also has to come with this big fat disclaimer of the Slab Lab is extremely unique. What we
Mhm.
do out here, you probably don't
Yeah.
want to do. What we do out here, you probably don't want to replicate. But what we do out here, we can learn something from in the pursuit of growing trophy bluegill.
Yeah.
And that mission is more important now than ever, especially considering the loss we just went through with the Slab Lab, but also because I do have this platform. I do have those eyes on me. And if I can bring something that works to clean up my pond, who's to say it can't be used in an application or in a setting for someone else? So that's what it's about at the end of the day is getting information out, and it'll be in real time, and we're going to share it all. And I think it's going to be very interesting for a lot of people to see.
Oh, cool. What haven't we covered that we want to cover? Where did
Um,
Frank go?
I don't know. Frank left me, and I'm so sad about it. I've seen him. I can count on one hand how many times I've seen him since July. And so, our neighbor's pond flipped 2 days after ours.
Mm.
They had a fish kill. And so I think Frank has left. He's probably gone a couple of miles down the road. There's some other ponds, and then there's Lake Gunnersville where he can go. It's a little bit harder of a hunt for him on Lake Gunnersville than it was at the Slab Lab, but he'll be back. And I believe that Baldy, our eagle, she'll be back too. They're all going to come back.
He might be at the tail race of Gunnersville just feeding on shad.
Yeah, that's it.
He might not come back if he's down there.
Well, he may come back once, maybe this time next year when we've got some growing fish in that water and thriving fish. So,
So one thing I want to sort of talk about towards the end here is, I follow you on Facebook,
yeah,
and I pay attention to what you're up to. And now that the Slab Lab is turned over and you don't have giant bluegill to be catching, you've been experimenting a little bit. Seen you doing
yes,
some stream fishing
yes,
and some
yes.
trophy smallmouth in the Tennessee River. What's your favorite non-Slab Lab bluegill that you've caught recently?
Smallmouth, smallmouth, no question. I'm obsessed with that fish. When I tell you it's like copper-nosed bluegill, smallmouth, smallmouth. It is crazy, my obsession with that fish. Matter of fact, the reason I chose this bluegill is because he has smallmouth colors.
Well, he's a pretty bluegill.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think you went up to, was it below Wilson or Wheeler that you fished recently that you were catching?
Wilson. Oh,
Yeah.
that would have been when I went, that was in March, I think, when I
Yeah.
went, because I have been terrorizing my local creeks and streams with my 3-weight fly rod. I have been doing that and catching smallmouth, and I actually just caught my first smallmouth on the fly in a creek, and I thought I was just on top of the world. I mean, you couldn't tell me nothing. I was so excited about it. I had a great time, but the big time fishing was at Wilson.
Yeah. I remember that. You went out with I don't know if he was a guide or just a friend, but,
Oh, Ryan Salzman. Yeah, he's one of my very best friends.
and I think, yeah, didn't you catch your personal best that day
I
and then
did.
break it?
Yeah. Yes,
What,
I
what,
did.
what was your big fish?
4.5.
4.5. So you're going to go back for a 5-pounder this year?
I am. I am waiting for the water temps to hit a magic number that I cannot disclose because this is old fisherman lore, but I am returning in the next 30 days to try and bust the 5-pound mark on smallmouth.
Hmm.
So,
I'm hoping to go on Friday below Pickwick. Same river,
okay.
but several reservoirs downstream, but I'll be targeting stripers more than smallmouth. So,
Well, fun. That'll be a fun time for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, it's funny. This big river fishing's a lot of fun. I love to tail race fish, and that's what you were
Yeah.
essentially doing for the smallmouth. Is you never know what you're going to catch,
No.
but you're going to catch.
Yeah.
And so I'll go up below Pickwick, and on let's say early May, a 200 to 300 fish day is common, but it'll be mostly white bass, a few other species. And then in June, it might be a mixture of fish with some big catfish. I think one day I
Yeah.
was up there, we had 40 catfish between 5 and 30 pounds. And then
Goodness
this time
gracious.
of year, I'll go up, and this time of year, I might only catch 15 fish, but they'll all be 6 to 10 pound stripers. It's just,
Yeah.
you just never know what you're going to catch.
That's one of the beautiful things, like, here in the state of Alabama, we have so much biodiversity when it comes to fish species. It's insane, and I had so much work, and I don't think people realize this, at the Slab Lab. When I tell you it was a commitment, blood, sweat, and tears, it was that to the 10th power, and I never had much time to get out and kind of explore my local creeks, my rivers, my streams, all those things that I've been doing, and I have just found so much solitude in being able to do that, and peace and comfort, because I was just wrecked after the Slab Lab went belly up. So being able to do that and catch these small fish and just see this beautiful water around. I even got to watch bluegill spawning in gin clear water. I watched a male parental just guard the nest. I did a whole video on my YouTube about it, because that energy in versus energy out, watching that energy out on that fish, I was like, I understand these fish so much now. And the Slab Lab was not known for visibility. So that's something we never got to see. So there has been a silver lining, and there always is. I truly believe that there has been a silver lining to all of this, and I've had a really good time. But now it's time for me to get back to work and to rebirth Slab Lab 2.0. So that's what we're about to do.
Well, awesome. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming back
Yes.
on and telling us about your heartbreak.
Thank you for listening.
Well, I'll have to get you back on here in a few years and
Yeah.
see
You'll
how
have to
things.
come see me.
Well, we're going to talk about that after we get off here, because I got a couple
Okay.
other opportunities for you. But
Okay.
thanks for coming on, and thanks for everybody for listening to Fish University. We'll catch you next time.
See y'all. Bye.
Fish University is hosted by Wes Neal an employee of Mississippi State University Extension Service, and a faculty member in the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. This podcast is part of the Natural Resources University network of podcasts. Funding was provided by the Renewable Resources Extension Act. If you have questions or suggestions, please go to the Extension website at extension.mississippistate.edu. Click on Natural Resources and then select the Fisheries tab in the drop-down menu. Or you can email me at wes.neal@msstate.edu.